Oh, hey. Welcome back. Today, we are going to look at... What are we going to look at? Alright, let's look at this little guy today. The Marmit Anguirus from their Parababy line. But before we do that, let's really quickly talk about the company Marmit. They are my favorite Sofubi manufacturer, even since before I knew what the word Sofubi was. Way back in the mid-90s, there was an old black and white newspaper type of like collectible magazine that me and my buddy JJ would always look at while we were at work. And there was always one particular toy dealer that always had an ad every issue for some various Godzilla figures, and mostly Bandai's, obviously. But there was always this super goofy looking Godzilla 1955 figure that would catch my eye in every issue. And it was like $50 or $60, so out of my price range as a 20-something, just out of my parents' house. But I always said someday I would want to get that figure. So little did I know that was a Marmit at the time. But I do know now, and that sucker is in my collection. So enough about me, though. Let's talk about Marmit. So perhaps not surprisingly, there's not a ton of info out there about a small designer toy manufacturer out of Japan. So my first stop was to Club Tokyo. Now, if you've never been to Club Tokyo, you should definitely check it out. It is easily the most in-depth English language resource documenting the history of kaiju collectibles. It's truly a labor of love run by Richard Cox and Mike Johnson, both of whom have an encyclopedic knowledge of kaiju and tokusatsu toy collecting. All right, now we're on the clubtokyo.org website, which, again, definitely check out. You can also become a patron of the website. It's like $3 a month, which helps costs of keeping and maintaining the website. Totally worthy investment. Going to check out the manufacturers tab here, which, as you can see, is very extensive. I'm going to go down here to Marmit, click on that bad boy, and then you'll see this is all divided into subcategories as well. So we went a little info, so we're going to click on the Marmit button there. And then we see here Marmit, founded by Akumatsu Kazumitsu. Marmit is one of the earlier independent toy manufacturers in Japan, and the first major toy line, Vinyl Paradise, ran from 96 to 99. Follow-up toy line was the Monster Heaven line, which ran from 02 to 2012, which covered Showa, Heisei, and Millennium eras. And then they also did the Vinyl Parababy line, which is what we're going to look at today. And that ran concurrent with the Vinyl Paradise series and somewhat into the Monster Heaven line as well. So that was 98 to 2009. So like I said, not a ton of info out there. I did reach out to Richard from Club Tokyo, and he advised me to reach out to Kaiju Nomura, another gentleman with a vast knowledge of the hobby. Kaiju Nomura advised me to just reach out to Akumatsu Kazumitsu, the owner of Marmit himself, which I did, and he actually was kind enough to answer some questions for me. As we already discussed, he stated he started the Vinyl Paradise line in 96 and did over 100 kaiju. He followed that up with the Monster Heaven line. I asked him what the process was for making the figures. He replied back to me, "Iron molds are made in a mold factory mainly in China. I make prototypes, and so do my friends. I do the painting, and so do my friends." So that answered that. And then something I had always wondered personally was, if each individual figure is painted by hand, does that mean that there are no two figures that are exactly the same? Or is there an actual template that they use for each figure? And he replied back, "Figures mass-produced at the factory have the same paint. Of course, since they are handmade by craftsmen, there are slight individual differences among them, but we equate it." There are times when I paint multiple pieces of my personal work in the same way, and there are times when I intentionally change them one by one. So that was something I was always kind of interested in. He said right now his focus is on his own personal artistic creations, but that the Monster Heaven line will be reissued next year, which is pretty awesome. That's pretty cool news. And so, you know, I just want to thank him for taking the time to answer my questions. It was really cool of him to do. And now, let's take a look at this little guy. All right, so here we have the Marmit Parababy Anguirus figure. According to Club Tokyo, this guy was released in 2004 as a mail-away figure. So this was a mail-order figure. Additionally to this guy, there is a different version, same sculpt, different paint of this guy. It is a bluish gray one. I will put a picture in there of that. I actually owned that guy first, the blue-gray one. But this is the one that I always wanted. So my friend Mike had this one, and I had the blue and the gray one, which is a little more rare. And he really wanted that one. I really wanted this one. We did a trade. I can't remember if it was an exact one-to-one trade. There may have been something else involved, but either way, I ended up with this guy, which is the guy that I always had wanted. He ended up with the one that he wanted, so it worked out for everyone, which is what we like, right? So again, I got that info off of Club Tokyo. There's some pictures of that guy on Club Tokyo, but we're going to take a look at this guy. All right, before we take a look at the figure, let's take a look at the header card. For those of you that don't collect these figures, generally when they were originally sold, they would be sold in a little baggie with a header card stapled to the top. They don't come in a box or anything like that. It was always in a baggie hanging on a hook. So that's how they were sold. And as for the header card, good luck, because I have no idea. It's in there somewhere. A lot of people are more OCD about their header cards than I am, and actually I kind of wish when I had started doing these, collecting these, that I had been a little bit more OCD about it, but it would be cool to have them and know what's what, and I'm sure if I took the time I could probably figure it out, but yeah, I'm not gonna probably ever do that. So, but we can look at them. I mean, here's a typical Marmit header card, right? This one, there's always a little info down here. This one tells you that it came from the 2005 Super Festival. A lot of these figures were a variant, would be sold at a specific festival. There would only be a certain amount made for that specific festival, which makes them a little more in demand than just the standard figures. So that's from the 2005 Super Festival. It appears that it is a Godzilla, 1962 Super Festival Godzilla. We also have, this is another typical header card. Looks like that was for a 74 figure. The reissues done by Metacom come with this type of card. You also have the Globster, which is a sort of a, they did a few figures that they called Globsters under the Marmit line. That's what that's from. You have this header card here, which is pretty cool. And then we have, we've already looked at that one, correct? Yeah, we did. So those are the header cards. Now, before we look at the figure again, we need to look at the accessory that comes with the figure. Parababy figures came with accessories, which is pretty cool. A lot of figures do not come with accessories. The Parababy figures, some of them would come with a little building. Some of them would come with some kind of a military vehicle. So some of them come with a smaller version of themselves, like the Gigan comes with a flying version of himself, which is pretty cool. This guy comes with a little tank from Destroy All Monsters, which is pretty cool. It's, as you can see, it's somewhat articulated. It is painted in this metallic gray, I guess we'll call it, the original color. You can see under there and under there. So that thing's fully painted. Obviously, it's very lightly detailed. It's not going to be meant to do much of anything except sit on a shelf next to the figure. And now we will look at the figure. We're finally going to get to the fireworks factory. Now we are going to take a look at this guy. So here we have the Marmit Parababy Anguirus. Whatever you want to call him. I've always called him Anguirus. That's what I'm going to call him. So here he is. And the first thing you'll obviously notice about this guy is that he is definitely not painted like the film version, which is kind of the point of these figures, right? These are not supposed to be movie screen accurate figures. These are supposed to be stylized figures. They're supposed to be indicative of something. They're supposed to be almost maybe a cartoon version of the figures. It depends on the sculpt. Some of them are way more accurate than others. Some of them are way off the deep end. As we see here, I think this guy, from a sculpt standpoint, isn't 100% film accurate, but he's pretty film accurate. I mean, he definitely has the proper stance here where he's crawling on his hands and knees because it's a dude in a suit, right? So that's cool. I think the head sculpt, which we'll take a quick look at here, is pretty suit accurate. I mean, it's obviously not exact. It's not an X Plus figure, right? It's not a Bandai figure, but, you know, I think maybe if it's not suit accurate, it is really, really cool. So sometimes I think cool, to me, is more important than necessarily suit accurate. So as you can see, the whole figure is done in this sort of, I guess you call it an orange, burnt orange, perhaps would be the color. The crest here done in green. You do have a little bit of brown spray on the top here. The eyes are done in silver, black. Teeth are done in silver. Tongue is done in red. Really well sculpted, like I said. I mean, he's got his little nostrils here. Surprisingly, the horn is not painted, so that's a bit of a surprise. Then you have a silver spray underneath here on his belly. A little bit more of the brown accents here along the side of his face as well. The spikes, his armor, all done in this really cool green. I think it looks really nice. Continues down the tail. And that's him in a nutshell. And again, I think the colors really pop on this guy. From the first time I saw him, this was the one that I wanted to get. Like I said, there are two versions of this guy. This is the guy one that I always wanted, so I was really happy to get him in my collection. There he is with his little army tank. And let's take a look at him with some other figures, shall we? Should we do some comparisons? I think so. Let's compare him to some other Anguirus figures that I have in my collection. First, we will look at one of my favorite goofy little bastards, the Vinyl Paradise Marmit Anguirus figure. This is an actual San Diego Comic-Con figure, which is kind of funny that they released a line of figures for the San Diego Comic-Con. But we're not going to look at him too closely because we'll look at him at a different time. But as you can see, calm down, brother. All right, so there you go. As you can see, he's a little guy. He's a little guy there. So you can see that. All right, what else do we got that we can compare him to? We have the Bandai 6-inch Anguirus. So we can compare him to this. Is from the Bandai 6-inch line. So he's bigger, you know, than the Bandai, than this version of the Bandai anyway. So as you can see, bigger. Let's see. Now we have the Marmit Monster Heaven 68. And this guy they've also sculpted this one standing up as well. And as you can see there, how they go together. So he looks, again, he's an itty bitty guy. And then we also have the OG Bandai. Actually, this is funny. This is one of the very first Bandai figures I ever bought back when I was in high school. And I actually sold this figure. And after I sold it, I had told the guy that I sold it to that it was one of my first ever Bandais. And I ran into him at G-Fest later on, maybe a year later. And he gave him back to me. And he just said, you know what, I want you to have this guy back. He's one of the first Godzilla figures you ever bought. So that was really cool. There's a guy named Scott that did that for me. I thought that was really cool of him to do. So yeah, this guy is I think was the very first Bandai figure I ever bought. But you can see, definitely a bigger guy. And that's how those two look together. And I bet right about now you're saying to yourself, I wish there was a Marmit Parababy Godzilla 1968 to compare with this guy. And guess what? It's your lucky day, because there is. There he is. So you see how they go together. They actually scale pretty well together. And the Godzilla, it's cool. He actually comes with the Kilak saucer, so you can see that there. And then we can throw the tank in there, and we can, just make a cool little display on your shelf there. So that's what those look like together. There's also, I have a bunch of the Power Babies, so we could do this all day, much like Captain America, but alas, we must move on. All right, so there he is, the Marmit Parababy Anguirus, and I think he's awesome. I think the colors really pop. He's got great shelf presence for such a small figure. If you can find him on the secondary market and don't have to sell a kidney to get him, he's totally worth picking up. That's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.